Welcome to Vin and Mike, episode 64. What is up, Mike?
What's up, Vin? How you doing, my friend?
Doing good, feeling good. We got 50-degree weather here in New York the last couple days, a little cooler today, but no snow as February 1st is around the corner. So all that is good on that end. Great championship weekend. Maybe not the best of games on one or the first game there, but always fun championships. Some breaking news we got today. Our good friend Kevin Bryant, who's the author of Spies on the Sideline, is going to join us today. Talk a little bit about the cheating that goes on in championship games and Super Bowl. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Like you said, I mean, no one could match last year's playoff games. Those were in a league of their own, right?
Yeah.
But still enjoy watching it. Great time of year. Exciting. We got ourselves a great Super Bowl we'll talk about later, but really can't wait. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff coming up. But let's get to the official business here. Vin and Mike is a partnership with Viggy Bets at Viggy Bets on Twitter or Instagram. Check them out right now. Give them a DM and let him know you're a fan of Vin and Mike, and he'll hook you up with some VIP memberships to his handicapping. And we're 2 weeks away from the Super Bowl, actually 12 days away. So people should get on Viggy Bets right now and get your Super Bowl picks from him. And he's doing his NCAA basketball and then baseball pitchers and catches report in 2 weeks. So with that, he'll be in with no run first inning. So all that fun stuff at Viggy Bets. We, of course, are on the Pigskin Podcast Network. Check them out, TPPN. We're also out in Kansas City, KKFR. They're real happy.
They're happy right now. Chiefs country,
as Andy Reid, likes to do. How about them Chiefs? So KKFI, our friends out there. And, of course, everything you can find on our website, vinandmikepodcast.com. Old shows, this show, videos, Spotify's. Our store is there with T-shirts and mugs and stickers and all that fun stuff. So go check out vinandmikepodcast.com. So let's start off, Mike. Breaking news.
Go ahead.
Breaking news. All right. Sean Payton is heading to Denver. I think they're just working out on the compensation deal with draft picks to the Saints. But he was going to be the next Broncos head coach. And then Demeco Ryans, the San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator, is heading home because he played for Houston for a lot of years and was there. Great linebacker, great player, very well respected. He will be the Houston Texans head coach. So let's start with our man Sean Payton, because I know everyone's more interested in that probably than Demeco Ryan. So, I think right away of Drew Brees, who of course was an undersized quarterback in the NFL. A guy that played about 5 years, I think, until he went to New Orleans and wasn't living up to the expectations that the Chargers had on him. They actually drafted Phillip Rivers as their top pick, and actually they drafted Eli Manning as their top pick and traded for Phillip Rivers, that whole thing. But they essentially wanted to get rid of Brees. He got hurt, I think, in like the last game of the season. His shoulder or something was supposed to go to Miami. They didn't make that move. Sean Payton takes over as the Saints head coach and brings Drew Brees in, and the rest is history. He becomes this Hall of Fame quarterback. But he already has, in my opinion, a Hall of Fame quarterback, a top guy in the NFL there, and Russell Wilson. And I think he comes in, brings his offense in there, and I expect the Broncos to turn it around pretty quickly. What do you think?
What's crazy about this whole thing? It was like the Wild Wild West in Denver. They really they tried to zero in on Demeco Ryan, right? And then I think they tried to get Jim Harbaugh from Michigan. Remember that?
Yeah.
And they negotiated the Sean Payton deal, tried to hire Ryans again, and then finally they finalized with Payton. So it was a wild, wild thing. How do you think he's going to gel with Russell Wilson?
Well, I like I said, I think he's going to bring in that Saints style of offense. And he likes to run the ball. I think a lot of these newer coaches and these offensive gurus, as they are, they do like to run the ball. They like to use 2-3 running backs. You see what Philadelphia does. You see what San Francisco does, and how they like to do it. And I think he brings in that offense. He always did it with Kamara and Ingram, and then he had Reggie Bush before that, and different guys that he likes. And he does like to use his running backs, out of the backfield as receivers and things like that. So I think he's going to simplify it really for Russell. He's going to have him in a place to be successful. And we'll see how Russell adapts to everything around him. I think the big question will be for the Broncos is, who do they bring in at running back? We know Javonte Williams was their number one back. He had the ACL injury. We'll see how he comes back. But I think they got to fill in some of those blanks, which they will. And really they have receivers in place. Judy and Sutton are really, really good, top flight kind of guys. Their defense was one of the best in the league last year. So basically you just got to get Russell back on track, really. So, it seemed like Russell struggled with Nathaniel Hackett's offense. I think they really, got rid of Hackett at the time they did because they wanted to start the search early and make sure that they interviewed everyone and brought in their best guy. And I don't know, it's hard to find someone that's going to be better than Sean Payton, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Should be good.
Yeah. So Demeco Ryans going to Houston.
Going back.
He did a great job in San Francisco. It seems like every coordinator that coaches for the 49ers eventually becomes a head coach somewhere, right? I mean, it's amazing.
Every time.
Even Mike McCarthy back in the day when he got the Green Bay job, he was the 49ers offensive coordinator before all that. But he's a guy that people really respect. I saw J.J. Watt's tweet when he heard that Ryans was going for his second interview and called him the captain, and he bought his house right next to him in Houston because of how much he respected him and knows if Demeco lived in that neighborhood, it's the neighborhood I should live in, right? I mean, so that says a lot about, a Hall of Famer like J.J. Watt who thinks about Demeco Ryans and the kind of person that he is. And I think he'll bring some stability there. And I think the big question for them is, again, going to be the quarterback situation as well. They're going to have to really improve there. And I would expect Demeco to improve their run defense right away. But it's nice to see a guy like Demeco Ryans, get that head coaching job.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that the fact that he's coming back, people are just excited because he was a leader there when he was there. He's a young coach, and he's going to bring a lot to the table. So great hire for them.
Yeah. And hopefully we brought breaking news to people.
Yeah.
I haven't tuned in to anything.
It's just happened.
Gave them 2 good hires, right? I mean, that's good.
That's why you got to tune in. Yeah.
That's right. So, all right, let's do what we do every Monday or Tuesday, depending on when we come on during football season. It's usually to recap the week before, and of course the AFC, NFC Championship games. I'll let you choose the conference. I'll let you start with your analysis. Go ahead. I pass it all on to you.
Thank you. I have to go with the 49ers game and the Eagles. I felt so bad for the 49ers, Vinny. I did, with their quarterback situation and Purdy getting hurt. And then Johnson came in. He just wasn't ready. And by the second half, it just seemed to me that they had given up. On the contrary, on the Philadelphia side, Jalen Hurts didn't even have a great game, right? Mediocre at best, and they still dominated. And this is a team that just grinds on their running game, and it just proves all season that Philadelphia finds a way to win. And, we can't take away, as we were just talking about the 49ers, they had amazing defense the whole year. But I think when that happened to Purdy and just the situation there with Johnson, and then at one time they were thinking, should we bring in McCarthy to do a wildcat? There was all kinds of stuff being circulated. But at the end of the day, Philadelphia outmatched them. We thought this before the game, that the 2.5 point spread was very favorable for Philadelphia. that we did think was a stronger team. Did think that San Francisco was going to put more of a fight, but given the quarterback situation and what happened, it just wasn't there. And I just really felt that because of all that going on, they kind of just, gave up in a way, and it was just not pleasant to watch. So those were my thoughts on the game.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at Jalen Hurts, and I'm thinking about some of the analysis, during the game, and they made a good point in that, you could see Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, waiting around for Jalen Hurts, right? And making sure he didn't go out the back door or making sure his RPO. They had to pay attention to that. And I think despite him not having a great game at all, I mean, if anything, it was a bad game passing wise. I think he was 15 for 25 and what do you have,
120 yards, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good game, right?
Right.
So you take that into consideration, but his just being on the field and giving that extra added, watch out, and the way that they moved players off the ball. I mean, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Malata, all those guys on that offensive line, a fantastic way. The three-headed monster they have there with Sanders and Gainwell, Boston Scott, comes out of nowhere. Every game he scores a touchdown somewhere.
Yeah.
You put that all together, and they really, really put together a tremendous, tremendous game. I mean, they were fantastic in all that.
Yeah, they really were. I mean, they were just on their game, and they played a really complete game. And then on the receiving side, look, you got Devontae Smith. He had a good game. AJ Brown, as you said, Gainwell. Even Dallas Goedert, he didn't have a great game, but when he does, I mean, these are guys that could step up. So they're so aligned. They have so many weapons. The Eagles are just, I think, in a different league, offensively and defensively.
Yeah, and we'll go into our Super Bowl picks, in our next show and really dig into that so people can get what we're feeling about that. But like you said, this is a team that's right now won 69-14, right? That's what they've scored and what the other two teams have scored combined. They've won by 55 points. And I don't think Jalen Hurts has played good in either game.
And that's why it's been overlooked, because he hasn't played well in either game. Right. But they're still dominated.
Like AJ Brown hasn't even had a good game yet. And he's a all-pro receiver.
I know.
I mean,
crazy.
That's why, the early rumblings is that this Eagle team is going to dominate this Chiefs team. And we'll get into that, I think, next week. We'll talk a lot more about that, leading up to the Super Bowl and dig deep into that. But, people talk about Purdy being hurt and then Johnson getting the concussion and all that. You got to remember, these were clean hits by Hassan Reddick and Sue. They were, good defensive plays. It just happened that Reddick hit, Purdy at the right time and where his arm was moving, and very similar to Josh Allen's injury against the Jets, right? The way his arm went, right? When you look at it, just that he got a complete tear of that UCL where Josh had a slight tear. The Sue hit, you could see that Johnson's head bounced off the ground. You could see that instantly looked like a concussion, and it was. So they didn't have anything to do on third down, right? You can run the ball all you want and everything. On 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, you gotta pass. And Purdy's just hitting the ball. If he couldn't throw the ball over 10 yards, if you've ever felt any kind of elbow injury at all or any kind of arm injury, you know how hard it is to move your arm and pick up a ball and throw it. And a complete tear of a ligament. I can only imagine the pain that was going down his forearm into his fingers and all that. So he felt bad there. But at the same time, I think this is what you see from this Eagles defense as well, right? They're 70-plus sacks on the year. They're able to get to the quarterback. They play really strong man coverage at the corner position with Slay and Bradbury and Gardner Johnson. They're very tough. So it's a big task in hand, I think, coming up for Kansas City. But I thought San Francisco played defensively as good as they could. it ends up being a good field position for the Eagles throughout that game. A lot of things like that also, hurt them on defense. But ultimately, I thought the Eagles would have won that game with Purdy or without.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, the Eagles from the first snap, they were in control. They really were. And it's funny because San Francisco, I try to wonder if Purdy was at 100%, right? What would have been the score? How close would have come? I don't know.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell because you had the fumble by Johnson. You had there's those little things that happen that you don't know what happens. If Purdy's in the game, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think you would have still seen the Eagles run the ball and be able to manhandle. I mean that offensive line is
that's their strength. That's their
Jason Kelce. I think we talked about it last week. Hall of Famer, All Pro. You could see it. So it was kind of funny yesterday. They were talking about, the two brothers, playing
first time.
And then Emmanuel Acho, who I tell you I watch all the time, he said it's the two bros and the two bros, and he flipped over to Mahomes and Hurts, right? Because it's the first time that two black quarterbacks are going to be playing against each other in the Super Bowl.
That's awesome.
So it's kind of funny. He kept going back and forth. He goes, well, you got the two bros, and then you got the two bros. That's funny how he did it. But, yeah, I mean, Jason Kelce to me is just phenomenal. You could see, every play how he's, 5 yards down the field. And I mean, this is a guy, this is a center, 300-pound center running around like he's a 220-pound fullback, right? I mean, he's all over the place. And dominates the line and so smart. To be a center in the NFL, you have to be very intelligent, know where the blitz is coming from, know where things are moving, understanding the snap count and all that. And you can just see how well coached they are, how they're just really ready to go. But look forward to seeing what the Eagles bring in a couple weeks. So. All right, go ahead, Mike. We'll flip over now.
Right,
AFC,
let's do
much closer game. I thought, it was
battle.
Very, very. I got a little nervous for the Bengals when it was 20-13 and before Mahomes fumbled. I had a feeling like the game was going to get away from them there, and that fumble was big. But I'll let you start off even with that.
Yeah, I mean, this was the most anticipated game because Cincinnati's had so much success against Kansas City, and I thought that the game was pretty even throughout. I just go to that end of the game with that when Mahomes was blatantly out of bounds, and then they hit him, and the field goal, which would have been missed. It would have been missed because they barely made it. They got the extra 15 yards, just a bonehead penalty there. But I felt that within the game, I've had conversations with people about this, that the refs in this game there were some terrible no calls. There were blatant holding penalties that were not called on Kansas City. There was a do-over third down, right?
It was very weird.
It was very bizarre, and I'm just like, how did this happen? How do you let this happen? But put that aside, right? Joe Burrow had the 2 interceptions, but otherwise played a really solid game. But you got to commend Patrick Mahomes and his coach. Those two, this is why they're dangerous. Patrick Mahomes, no matter how much pressure he has, he finds a way to get the ball to somebody. He has that vision on the field, and it really doesn't matter who it is. And that really carried them to victory again because of that man. He was incredible, and he hasn't shown any nerves, and it just shows how many playoff games, what is it, a record or something? He's the youngest person to be in 10. Oh, I read some kind of crazy stat. I'll have to look it up.
What's that on who?
Mahomes, he's in the most.
I think he's tied with Brady and 5 championship games or something like that, right? I know they've been something. I know he's been in 3 Super Bowls in his first 6 years, something like that. He might be the youngest guy to be in 5 straight AFC Championship games. That's very possible.
Yeah, and then just with Kansas City, the rushing game, not really there. It was the receiving game that, I mean, just so many different people, and I have to say, we talked about the Kelsey brothers. Travis Kelsey, that game, 7 receptions, 78 yards, solid. I mean, averaging 11 yards. He's a force, right? He's his go-to. He's like a Gronk, right? So he's like a Gronk.
Yeah,
so,
you're going to start putting him in that GOAT category soon, because you look at his numbers, they're comparing to those guys, right?
These two work so well together. But I think that the thing was with this game was it could have gone either way. I think Cincinnati could have definitely won it. It was Joe Burrow had a chance to win it at the end, but that wasn't the case. And it's just the way, I think it's just the way the game ended that was so disappointed with a field goal. So
yeah, I'll tell you, I was a little disappointed in Burrow down the stretch there. I thought he had some opportunities, despite all the ref stuff and everything going on and whatever. I thought he had a couple opportunities in that fourth quarter to drive and move him into position, and just didn't make the plays, when it counted. Again, it was 5 degrees there as well. I think that's one of the things we forget to take into consideration. Right. It was very cold, very hard to grip a ball in that kind of weather. So, ultimately, with that kind of weather, I think the under definitely played in better than when we originally thought about the game because of that weather, and that's why, you look into that stuff as well. But I look at that last play. It's not even the hit out of bounds, because they happen a lot. It was how far out of bounds.
Right. He was in no man's land. It wasn't like it was a border. It was like he was all the way out of bounds.
Mahomes' second foot landed out of bounds when he hit him. It wasn't even his first foot, or just, and he got hit from behind, which is even nuttier.
I know.
You're chasing him. He's heading directly for out of bounds. And then it looked like OCI broke his leg on that play. Like, you go back and watch that. It looked like his right leg twisted and broke when he hit the sideline. But he got up and walked away, which I was like, holy cow. I mean, this guy just, cost his team the game and broke his leg. That's what I thought. But he ended up not, thankfully not hurting himself. But I felt bad for him. You could tell that he really felt disappointed in himself and really took it really, really hard. And but like you said, you take away that 15 yards, they're about 60 yards away. They can't even attempt a field goal at that point. Right. They're not going to. It's 8 seconds left. My guess is they try to run another quick out there at that point, because it's first down. To try to run a quick out or something, to try to gain 7-8 yards and maybe try a 52-yarder. If that doesn't work with 4 seconds, let's say, you got a Hail Mary. And most likely at that point, we're going to overtime, right? And, once again, crazy overtime. Who knows what could have happened in that. So, a lot of people say, oh, that's not the reason it cost them the game. Well, ultimately – I get it. There's a lot of plays that happen, but it comes down to that at the end, and it was a really bad penalty at a really bad time. You get a lot of, again, roughing the passers, hitting out of bounds, personal fouls, the taunting. There's a whole crazy kind of penalties going on. But when that happened and the time it happened, it's what really cost you. It really cost you the game. I mean, that's what it comes down to. But I thought Mahomes on a really bad ankle, and you could see sometimes it looked like he wanted to just, fall to the ground. He really gutted through it. I thought Romo made a really good point when he rolled to his left, that's the toughest throw to make, because you really got to plant on your back foot and really fire it. And you can see the pain that he was in when he did that. And I'll tell you, that 3rd and 4 with that ankle, I never expected him to take off like that. I didn't think he could. And he just gave it all. I mean, he was on pure adrenaline rush. He's got that mindset, right? The greats have a different way of thinking, right? They see things differently, they anticipate things differently, but they have this killer kind of mindset. I always think about, Jordan with the flu, right? Willis Reed, right, limping on to the court. Right? I mean, you could think like Kobe Bryant, all the times, that you could see that Mamba mentality, as they say, right? That killer instinct, and you'd think these guys are going to eat you, before they say hello to you, right? I mean, it's just the way they are. And Mahomes, he's quiet on the field, but you hear some of the stories about him in the locker room, how he basically says that, we're going to destroy this team. I'm the man. He thinks that in private. He says it in private, and in public he shows it. Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I didn't expect him to have any kind of like big time game like he did. He had a very high level kind of game. They, like you said, they didn't really run the ball well. I know they tried. They tried to get it to Pacheco. They had McKinnon in there. They tried. I think they ran the ball. They had a bunch of carries, and they tried, but ultimately it came down to Mahomes, who lost like 4 of his receivers.
Right.
He had Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and then he had like 4 tight ends with him during the whole thing. So throughout that whole process, it was unbelievable. The game that he really showed up and had. I mean, it's just incredible. I really look forward to Andy Reid in his 10th championship game, his 4th Super Bowl, to really, come on and see what he can do with Mahomes. Makes you, you look at it, right? Besides Mahomes and Kelsey and Andy Reid, what else, can the Chiefs bring to a game that Philadelphia isn't better in? I mean, Chris Jones is great as a defensive tackle, and Tui's good as a guard, but ultimately, I look at it, this Eagles team is so superior right now, and we'll get into more analysis, for next week's show. But fantastic matchup coming on because Mahomes will be out there, right?
I know. Anytime he's in, you're getting a good game.
Absolutely. All right, let's take our commercial real quick, and then when we come back, our good friend Kevin Bryant will be on with us to talk about Spies on the Sidelines and some of his other research that he's been doing about the Super Bowl and the conference championships that just ended. So the stage is set, and we're counting down to the battle in Arizona. There's no better way to get ready for the NFL action than with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 57. New customers can just bet $5 and get 200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can take a shot at even bigger payouts with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. So boost your Super Bowl 57 winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. I think, Mike, I'm going to look into some of those anytime touchdowns, and throw in maybe an over, we'll figure that all out. But a lot of fun betting coming up on the Super Bowl. I think right now it's -2 for the Eagles. We'll get more into that next week, but that -2 is feeling a little similar to San Francisco right now. All right, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code TPPN. New customers can bet $5 on Super Bowl 57 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code TPPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void in Ohio, and see show notes for details. All right. So I'm guessing you can't do some of the stuff in Ohio that we thought you could do, Mike.
I guess I won't be going there anytime soon.
Let's bring in our good buddy here, good friend of the show. There he is, Kevin Bryant. Kevin, how you been?
Hey, great. How you guys doing?
Good. Good to see you again.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Personally want to thank you for providing those codes for our audience before Christmas time. We did some giveaway with the show, and hopefully you got some traction from us on people during Christmas time to buy some of your books, Spies on the Sidelines.
Yep, absolutely. I appreciate all the support you guys have given me.
Good. So, we talked via email, And I know you said you were doing some different research on conference championship games and the Super Bowl and spying and all that. So I'd like to hear some of your updated research maybe you came across, or something different that you can tell us and our audience.
Yeah, so what I got is a bunch of, stories about the Super Bowl. So yeah, I mean, everything, just like the books, Spies on the Sidelines, I've got stories all the way from stuff that's, every team's, techniques that all the teams use that are permissible, on through, questionable techniques and stuff that is illicit and not allowed by the league. So, yeah, where do you want me to start?
Why don't you tell us some of the things that not are allowed by the league? Again, you don't have to mention anything specific or anything, but just some of the techniques that were done that are not allowed by the league that teams have done.
Yeah, so we'll just start with spying on another team's practice. I think that's a big one. That's always a big worry for a lot of teams there. And, this goes all the way back. I mean, heck, the first time that it's been known to happen, and I know that it's happened in a championship game, was 1958. And that is where the Colts were facing off against the Giants in, the greatest game ever played. And so what you had was the Colts under head coach Weeb Ewbank, who had lost that matchup during the regular season by 3 points. Okay. And that game had taken place in New York, and the championship game was going to be in New York once again. So Coach Ewbank was trying to figure out, hey, how the heck do I defeat the Giants? And so he asked one of his assistants, Bob Shaw. He says, Bob, I need you to go spy on the Giants practice before this game. And Bob's like, whoa. I'm not feeling too comfortable about all of this. So next up, Carol Rosenblum approaches Bob. Says, Bob, we need you to spy, man. And Carol Rosenblum was one of those guys that, like, if you crossed him, man, you were out of there, So Bob's feeling really nervous at this point, but he's like, Carol, I just, I don't know. I'm really worried, what's going to happen to me and my family if I'm caught. So Mr. Rosenblum says, you know what, Bob? Relax, man. Okay. If you get caught, I'm going to give you a job. It may not be with the NFL. Okay. If the NFL bans you for life, there's nothing I can do, but I will make sure you have a job and can put food on the table for your family. So Bob says, okay, I guess I'll do it. And up he goes. He goes up onto the roof of a building that's overlooking the location where the Giants practice. And, and he watches the practice, and he doesn't come away with anything big. But at least it gives Coach Ewbank a feeling that, like, hey, the Giants aren't putting anything crazy into the upcoming game plan. And we can, he can pretty much prepare for them as he sees fit to do on film. And that's what they do. And it ends up being a tie game after 60 minutes. So they go into overtime, and the Colts pull out a narrow win in fantastic fashion. And, everybody's super happy. But it was an advantage. Did that make the difference? That's the question. And, so that was all the way back in 1958, which, some people go, oh, okay, that was in 58. Well, that still doesn't happen. That stuff doesn't really happen anymore. But I can assure you it does, because I think, as you guys probably already know and are tracking, as recently as the Rams-Patriots Super Bowl, we know that the Patriots were involved in spying on a practice.
Yeah. I wanted to really we spoke to you last time, and I really want our audience to understand, how did you get into all this? What made you so, as far as writing this book, Spies on the Sideline, how did you really get into this and the specifics of it?
Yeah, so I've got, let's see, what is it, 23? So I've got 24 years of experience protecting and collecting information for the Department of Defense. So, I've got a master's degree in intelligence studies. So it's kind of, the subject's in my wheelhouse, and I got very interested in it with all things, Spygate, and then being a Broncos fan when McDaniels came over, became the head coach of the Broncos, brought a former Patriots videographer with him who had been caught up in all things Spygate, and the Broncos ended up taping a walkthrough practice of the San Francisco 49ers, which the Broncos staff learned about and turned themselves into the NFL. So as a Broncos fan at that point, I just go, man, this is the second big spying scandal that I'm aware of in my lifetime. And I just began wondering how much of this stuff has really gone on in the NFL's history.
Right.
Started researching, wanted to see if anybody had ever written a book on it and learned more about it. Realized nobody had. And I figured, you know what? With my background, I'm as good as anyone to write this book, and I'd wanted to write one for quite some time, and so off I went.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have the knowledge and the ability to put this together. It's a great book. If people haven't checked it out, it's Spies on the Sidelines. It's written by Kevin Bryant. You can go to his website to grab it. So let's talk about some legitimate spying and things that teams can do that is, maybe on the fence, but they can pull it out if they want to.
Sure. Well, I would say, to begin with, the first thing that they're going to do is film study, which is big. It's huge. And to give you an example of what a huge difference that can make in a Super Bowl. I'll go through this story, and then I'll get into one that's a bit a little controversial somewhere in that gray there. But,
yeah.
Okay, so Broncos versus the Panthers. So we go to the 2016 Super Bowl. All right, so we've got Cam Newton and the Panthers, who are just rolling, steamrolling through everybody, going up against the Broncos, who are they're good, but they're limping into the playoffs because Peyton Manning, his arm is just fading. Like every week, it's getting weaker and weaker, and it's his last year ever, right?
Yeah.
So it really comes down to the Broncos defense to win this game, okay? So Wade Phillips, the Broncos defensive coordinator, and his staff just spend endless hours in the lead up to this game, reviewing film, trying to figure out how do we beat the Panthers. And so they learn a couple of things that the rest of the league hadn't learned up to this point. One is that Cam Newton does not like to scramble on impromptu runs. Meaning, if it's a designed run, he runs. If it's not, he doesn't. And so throughout the season, teams had been scared to blitz him for fear that he would run. But the reality was he really didn't like to do that. The second thing they learned was that the Panthers' offensive line wasn't quite as stout as everybody believed. They were good, but they relied heavily on double teaming other teams' best pass rushers. So Wade Phillips designed a plan to have as many people rush the quarterback on obvious passing plays as the Panthers had blockers at the line of scrimmage. So if the Panthers had 7 blockers at the line of scrimmage, they rushed 7 people. And what that allowed is the Broncos defensive ends, DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller, or outside linebackers, right, to go one-on-one. And those two are, future Hall of Famers. And the Panthers just couldn't stop those two. And they destroyed. That was the reason that, just like the week before or 2 weeks before Tom Brady had got hit over and over, Cam Newton suffered the exact same fate. Broncos caused the fumbles, interceptions, recovered 1 fumble in the end zone, and their defense by itself pretty much won that game. So I think that's a great example of just how decisive something as simple as good film study and learning about your opponent can be.
Yeah, I think what you touched upon before, that you go back all the way to the 1950s, and even though technology has changed, people are still using the basics just to really get that. Hasn't really changed, and you see that's happening. So some of the tactics are still the same, and not
yeah. I mean, it hasn't. So what you have now is it's film study, but because teams have access to programs and software that literally allows them to put in search fields. So, for instance, you could punch in 3rd and 1, Panthers, 2016, and it would come up with a list of plays that that coaches could watch of every 3rd and 1 situation that the Panthers had faced that year, right? Which is a tremendous help to coaching staffs nowadays, because they don't have to go through and watch every single play of every single game trying to find all the short yardage plays.
Yeah.
It's easily searchable. They can go through it. They can watch everything in 10 minutes and be done. And then they can set up, they can understand what are the other team's tendencies. They can write all of that down and figure out, okay, 3rd and 1, 80% of the time they run it up the middle, 10% of the time they run out wide, and 10% of the time they do a pass play, which is very, very helpful.
It's like Control F when I get a 200-page document to find some keywords.
That is exactly what it's like, right? Yeah,
that's true.
So let's hear some of the gray areas of the spying going on.
Yeah, gray area. So I like this one. So this is a AFC Championship game in 1970. Okay, so right before the AFC Championship team was going to play the NFL, right? The NFL champion, while the leagues were in the midst of merging. Okay, so the AFC Championship that year was between the Chiefs and the Raiders. Okay, and Hank Strom, the coach of the Chiefs, gets a phone call at his hotel, and it's from a fan. Or an alleged fan, okay, who says, hey, I was sitting in a restaurant when I was seated next to Daryl LaMonica, the Raiders quarterback. And he was sitting there with another member of the team. And Daryl LaMonica sketched out plays on a paper placemat and then left. And before the waiter could take that thing and throw it away, I picked it up.
Wow.
And I was wondering if you would be interested in having it, right?
Oh, man.
And so Hank's like, how about you swing by the hotel? Okay. And so, so while he's having this conversation, Monsignor Mackey, who is the Chiefs' unofficial clergyman, is in the room. And when Hank hangs up the phone, he goes, hey, Hank, you shouldn't just take this from this guy, man. It could be a setup. This is the Raiders we're talking about with Al Davis, okay? He could be trying to get you in trouble with the league. He could be feeding you false information. Any number of things could be happening here. So Hank goes, yeah, you're probably right. Okay. Well, how about you do it then, Monsignor Mackey? Right? And he's like, well, that's not what I had in mind. But, Hank, talks this clergyman into meeting this guy. And they do. They exchange the placemat in exchange for some AFC Championship tickets. So they look at this drawing. And one thing is very obvious to Hank Stram right away. It was drawn by a professional. Okay, so he knows it's not just a fan who came up with some drawings to try to get some free tickets. So he ends up calling his staff together and says, hey, he explains what happened and says, I think we need to be prepared for this. Because what it shows, it has the Raiders' number 1 wide receiver lining up in the slot, where that receiver had not been used all year long. So we need to be we should at least be prepared for this in case we do see it. Okay. And so the defensive coordinator prepares the Chiefs defense for just this. And sure enough, in the second half, this is exactly what the Raiders do. And they go to. And the Chiefs, they're set for it. They're ready for it. And as a result, this helps them on their way to victory. And it was a huge upset that the Chiefs pulled against the Raiders because, one, the Raiders destroyed the Chiefs during the regular season, and two, the last playoff game that they played was just a massive win for the Raiders. No one was even giving the Chiefs a chance this game, and the Chiefs managed to pull it off. And this type of stuff helped. And that type of thing, it happens all the time. It's kind of that gray line, protecting your information, protecting your paperwork. Okay, so if a team can manage to acquire your paperwork via, there's a bunch of different means that teams use to do it. One is hotel rooms. Okay, maybe you leave paperwork in your waste paper basket, and hotel employees, especially if they're fans of that team, and you're playing in an away game, and you're playing in, let's say, Kansas City. Okay, and you're at a hotel in Kansas City. If you leave trash there that has team secrets, it may end up with that other team. Likewise, college football. That's what I'm writing on now. My next book's on college football. I'll tell you, there were 2 games as of 2 years ago that were held in Atlanta. 2 bowl games in back-to-back weeks. Well, both teams, 2 away teams, stayed at the exact same hotel. The first team had information, I believe it was a computer, stolen from them. The second team had paperwork stolen or attempted to be stolen from the exact same conference room. Now, it's pretty far-fetched to think that a random thief shows up on 2 separate weeks and is targeting this conference room where, teams are doing this, right? Chances are it's an SEC opponent that was trying to steal information from 2 SEC teams, and both of them were different SEC teams, right? To try to gain an advantage for the next season. And this is the type of stuff, it goes on in college football, it goes on in pro football. Is it illegal? Well, at times it can be. Taking stuff out of another team's trash bin or dumpster diving, which is somewhere in the gray. Is it illegal? Is it not? It depends where it is.
Somebody's trash could be somebody's treasure.
Right.
Yeah, you better believe it. Yeah, you better believe it.
I want to make that's 2 things. One, I don't want Vinny going to see the Raiders on the road in hotel rooms because he's very careless. Two, I got to ask you this, Kevin, as a beloved Jets fan, Super Bowl III, they were please tell me. They're a 19.5-point underdog. Is there any indication of spying? Did they win fair and square the New York Jets?
What Super Bowl was that? Who were they?
Super Bowl III, the Colts.
Jets versus Colts.
Yeah, and Weeb, I think, was the coach, right, of the Jets?
Eubanks.
Yeah. So, no, but I do have a story about. So Weeb, when it comes to Weeb Eubank in the Jets and the Colts. Well, no, I take it back. That was Browns. That was a Browns and Colts story.
Okay. I don't have a lot to celebrate, so I just need to know.
No, but
I won that Super Bowl.
Weeb Eubank. So I wouldn't say anything that Weeb Eubank touched. Yeah. All right. He was like the Al Davis before Al Davis. Okay. I mean, Weeb Eubank, he even, to give you an example, he used to be a coach he was assistant for Paul Brown with the Browns. And when he got a job offer with the Colts, Paul Brown didn't want him to go immediately to that team. And actually Paul Brown asked the league commissioner, hey, can I keep Weeb Eubank on my staff until after the draft? Because he was responsible for putting together the whole draft for the Browns. So the league commissioner said yes. Then during the draft, guess what happened? Well, the Colts are picking a few picks right before the Browns. And who do the Colts pick every single time? Well, they're picking whoever the Browns had selected as their the draft pick that they wanted.
Of course.
Okay. And Weeb Eubank Paul Brown catches on to this pretty quickly. And he very quickly realizes that Weeb had done this. He sees that a journalist that covers the Colts keeps coming over to the table where they're sitting and talking to Weeb. And he figures it all out. And allegedly, in a book, Coach Brown writes that, Weeb Eubank confessed to him and said, hey, I did it for my family. So, take that for what it's worth. But in keeping with all the other stories that I know about Weeb Eubank, yeah, it's probably legit. He was pretty shifty, and I love the guy. He was funny as heck and did some great things. Like I said, he was the Al Davis and Bill Belichick before those guys came along.
Mm-hmm. One of our viewers wants to know, how'd you become a Denver Broncos fan?
So I was living in Seattle, and I was probably in like third grade, and my dad was a big Seahawks fan, and I just got tired of watching the Seahawks lose. And I saw them play against the Broncos and John Elway was just tearing it up like he always does, And I was like, I'm going to be a fan of that team, Dad. They're good. And so, I picked them up and just went along for the ride, and have been a Broncos fan ever since.
Are you excited about the Sean Payton news today?
Yeah, that was huge. Honestly, I haven't even had a chance to read really how it all went down. I just saw a blurb when I was on, I think I was on Twitter and checking through, and someone had mentioned, hey, we got Sean, we got him, and I was like, what? I did not expect that. So maybe you guys can tell me what, and I'm sure your fans would be interested in knowing too. What did the Broncos have to give up to acquire him?
Last I read, they were still negotiating compensation. Okay. Which, of course, will be draft picks. Yeah. I don't know what kind of draft picks Denver has left after they've traded like everything for Russell to begin with.
Right. We're trading 2033 draft picks right now. So
we're going to be like the Rams that have no first-round draft pick for like 10 years. But, hey, listen, you win a Super Bowl, no one cares about the draft picks.
Right. That's very true. And I will say, there's a lot of building blocks that you go around. And to me, if you don't have a coach, you don't have anything. Okay, because you can have all that all these great players, but unless they're put in the right situations, it's tough. And and having a quarterback's a big piece of it. Is Russell Wilson there or not? Is he going to be able to fill the billet? I don't really know, but I don't know. We'll find out. I was not too impressed with the Broncos head coaching job this last year, so. Hopefully we'll, at the very least, we can answer that question. Do we have a quarterback to go forward with in the future?
Well, Mike is hoping that Hackett, now that he's the offensive coordinator with the Jets, figures out how to maybe help Zach Wilson or potentially any other quarterback that's going to come in.
Help Zach Wilson pack his bags. Not stay.
Yeah. Hopefully he can hack it. We'll find out.
That's exactly right. Hey, question. So we got Eagles, Chiefs in a couple of weeks. Andy Reid went to 10 championship games. This will be his fourth Super Bowl. What is the rumblings about Reid and what he does as far as preparing his teams? Anything that your research came about?
I don't have really any dirty stuff on Coach Reid. I searched high and low for him because as much as he wins, I'm sure he's got to have some great stories out there. So, and they're going to come out at some point. I can't wait for him to sit down and write a book or have someone do it for him. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this game. I think it's probably one of the better Super Bowls that we've seen in a while. Two really, really, good teams. My fear is how is Patrick Mahomes gonna stand up being injured. That Phillies defense is just, they're rocking, offensively and defensively. I mean, I heard you talk about it earlier before I came on. Just how good that Philly team looks. And, I think they are clear favorites. Going into the playoffs, Philly was my pick to win it. They're still my pick to win it. When I saw their draft last year, they had the best draft, hands down. And, they got a bunch. I live here in Atlanta. And when I saw the two best players from the University of Georgia who had just won a championship both go to Philly, and both of those guys, in my mind, were top 15 picks, right? One of them went number 1 overall. The linebacker, which dropped all the way to the 4th round, he was the heart and soul of Georgia's defense. And I was like, how is he slipping? And I was like, oh man, Philly just got an absolute steal. And they're stacked. I mean, they look like they crushed the draft, and they filled in a bunch of key holes. And I fully expect that they're gonna win. Having said that, betting against Patrick Mahomes, it's dangerous, man. That guy is bar none. He reminds me of John Elway back in the day. Like, if he has the ball with less than 30 seconds to go, he's going to win the game. And so, I just remember, last year, the game against the Bills in the playoffs, where, he's got the ball with, I don't know how many seconds it was, 28 seconds or something like that, 75 yards to go. And he drives him down and wins the game. And I'm just like, that's Patrick Mahomes. And so if anybody can do it, and if anybody can beat a superior team, it's that guy.
Yeah. I mean, it's on paper, and if you just take away Mahomes, it looks like the Eagles should just crush them, right? I mean, when you really look at it,
yeah.
We add in the Mahomes factor, and you got to add in the Andy Reid factor. And,
absolutely.
And then at that point, you're just like, well, the Eagles should crush them, but are they going to crush them? And it's a neutral field, and like all that stuff that plays into it. So
right.
we definitely look forward to the game.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, is there one Super Bowl or conference game that we didn't talk about that will make people interested in maybe replaying it, looking for it, and something that happened in that jumps out at people?
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about coaches and what a difference they can make. And I think, if you're going to talk about any Super Bowl, with that in mind, the Rams Patriots Super Bowl, right? Because you have the Patriots that are clear underdogs, right? I mean, they've got a good offense, but it's not all that at the time. And a very so-so mediocre Patriots defense going up against the Rams offense, the greatest show on turf, which has, the top ranked offense in the league. I think they were the number 3 ranked defense in the league too, right? And so the Patriots are severely overmatched. But going into that Super Bowl, the walkthrough practice that takes place on the Super Bowl field the day before the game, okay, what transpires? Well, both teams go and hold a practice. The Patriots go first, and then the Rams go second, okay? The Patriots staff, when they're done, they all leave, except for 2 videographers that stay behind, okay? They put away all their filming equipment. They're just on the sidelines or in the stands, okay? And they sit there and they watch the practice. Well, what does Bill Belichick want to know going into the Super Bowl? One big thing. How are the Rams going to use Marshall Faulk? Because he is a superstar, okay? And while the videographers sit there watching the practice, they learn, 1, Marshall Faulk is going to be returning at least 1 kickoff. They learn he's going to be catching passes out of the flat. And they see a bunch of goal line plays that Marshall Faulk and others are going to be involved in, okay? And so when these videographers are done watching this, they go and they meet with the Patriots defensive coordinator back at the hotel and give him a debrief about everything that they've seen, okay? And years later, all of this stuff comes out, okay? Beforehand, after the Super Bowl, there's all this conspiracy theory of, the Patriots must have taped and recorded one of our practices to learn all of this. because they knew all this stuff that was going to happen that had never been used before in any game, and knew it was going to take place. And so all of these accusations are out there. Well, a former Patriots staff member reveals to, the NFL commissioner that, hey, it wasn't a recording. It was simply, we had some people that watched this practice that took place. And so, which isn't anything new for the Patriots. The Patriots have been involved in this before that. They were involved with the same technique after that. Actually, Bill Belichick has a son on the staff, and he was caught doing the exact same thing later. And a team caught him doing it and asked him to kindly leave the premises. So, this is the type of stuff that goes on. And so, is it underhanded? Does it break league rules? Well, it all depends on how it takes place and how it occurs and whatnot, and what the commissioner thinks about it at the time. And, the commissioner didn't punish the Patriots for any of that at that time. But then at other times, for something like, Spygate, he throws the book at teams. So it's always really interesting. And a lot of times there aren't specified rules or even specified punishments for various things. It's all interpretations on, fair play clauses that the NFL has. And it's up to the commissioner to assign a punishment as he sees fit. And sometimes that punishment is nothing at all. And other times it's losing first-round draft picks and huge fines and everything else. It's the joys of the NFL.
I tell you, it's the integrity of the game is very important to the NFL now, because I think of the betting aspect, especially the legalized betting aspect now.
Yeah,
that's why a guy like Calvin Ridley, who basically, sitting in his house, bets on his team to win and suspended for the entire year, right? So, the integrity of everything is extremely important. And I would expect that if any of this real spying goes on, and the NFL would catch on, especially with the gambling aspect to it, I think the punishments now would be much more extreme, because you're really impacting the bottom line, right? These TV deals are enormous, like all this stuff that goes on. So great stuff, Kevin. Like always, we appreciate it. Just tell our audience where they can get the book and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so my website is spiesonthesidelines.com. You can find all the ways to be able to purchase the book there. It's out in hardback, ebook, and audiobook formats. It's for sale online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Walmart. Any of your big, book retailers are gonna sell it online for you. And you can find all of my social media handles on the website as well.
Great. Appreciate it. Great, good to have you on. We'll be happy to have you on, again, especially find more research, or when you come out with your college book, just, where to reach us, and we're always happy to have you on.
All right. Well, thanks a bunch, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care, Kevin.
Take care, Kevin.
All right. Bye.
All right. Kevin Bryant, Spies on the Sidelines. Mike, I know you read it in real detail, and you definitely recommend it to our audience.
Yeah, I mean, those stories are just crazy. I mean, and as Kevin said, even though technology is changing, but people, they always want to get that edge. So just some of those stories were nuts.
Yeah. Well, he didn't have any weed stories about the Jets and Colts. It makes you think a little bit, right?
I know. Just the
way he mentioned Al Davis so many times, I was like, "Oh my God, here we go!"
You see what Matt wrote over there?
Yeah, he said I'm writing the NFL after the episode. That's right, Matt. I'm writing them. Al Davis was right this entire time. The NFL cheated us so many times. I tell you, the really cool story about Al Davis, I'll say this before we wrap up, was the John Elway stuff with the Colts, in that everybody knew that Elway wasn't going to the Colts, and supposedly the Raiders had a big deal in place that the Colts were ready to pull the trigger up, and the NFL and Paul Tagliabue, because the whole fight there, squashed that trade, and it never went through. But he ended up ultimately going to the Broncos. A lot of people think because Davis and Tagliabue's contentious relationship, stopped it. But it would have been very interesting to see if the Raiders would have pulled that trade off and what would have happened over time. But it is what it is. But yeah, Al Davis was definitely a character. I think you watched 30 for 30.
Oh, I love that with the
one.
NFL commissioner. That was the best.
Yeah,
what Al Davis did as far as locations of different teams and relocate. I mean, he was the pioneer for that. He really was. You got to watch that one.
Yeah, you
got to watch that one. It's so good.
The modern NFL city, the modern NFL stadium, what teams ended up, being able to do because of Al Davis trying to relocate the Raiders, really put what we have in place today. But thank Kevin Bryant for coming on. Like I said, he always has some good stories to tell. I know he's very, very passionate about these
is.
Right? I mean, he really feels that they were, into things for a long time, and like you said, gray areas, what you consider, and then blatant cheating, like he said, and then some legitimate stuff. I think it was very interesting how Wade Phillips, and I think this is when you look at coaches, we always talk about this, why he was a defensive coordinator for 50 years. You could see, right? He studied that film with Cam Newton and knew if we blitz them and we do one-on-one matchups with Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, we're going to crush this guy all day. And you go back to that Super Bowl where Cam and the Patriots were, I think they were 15-1. He was the MVP of the league, and they crushed him. I mean, they killed him that game. He looked like he didn't want to be on the field anymore. So, really good stuff there. All right, how you doing? Good.
Good.
All right.
How you doing?
All right. I'm going to wrap it up now, right?
Thanks.
We got a Super Bowl show coming up next week. What else we got? That's it. Basketball's coming down. By the way,
yes.
Before we go, Tyler Huntley, who threw 2 touchdown passes this year, is now the ultimate Pro Bowl quarterback for the AFC.
All right, Pro Bowl. Who cares?
you got Tyler Huntley, who threw 2 touchdowns.
Just leave it at the skills competition, and that's
what it is, right?
Just leave it at that.
He's a fantastic athlete. He'll be fun to watch in the skills competition. Oh my God! Like I said, I can't stand that thing. All right, that's it. Let's wrap it up. All right, Mike. You have a good night.
Have a good night, Vin. Thanks, everybody. See you next time for a Super Bowl preview. See you then. Bye.